you ready to make technology work for you? Tune in to Act on Tech, the podcast where we break down the latest tech trends and show you how to boost your productivity at home and in your business. So, subscribe to Act on Tech today and visit alexcustomtech.com to see how we can take your business to the next level. That's Act on Tech, your guide to smarter tech for a smarter business. Alex Custom Tech, IT means integrity and trust.
Hi, hello. Welcome to Act on Tech, where we talk all things technology. I am Alex of Alex Custom Tech, and today we're gonna talk about the DDR RAM shortage, but this is part 2, kind of like a follow-up to what we just talked about in the last episode. And like I said, I glanced over it, kind of give you what DDR RAMs are and what we're talking about when we're talking about the shortage, and I kind of maybe I've given you a little bit of my philosophy about economics and how economics works, because like I'm not on the bandwagon with everybody else saying, oh, there's a shortage and companies are evil and that kind of stuff. I'm taking a step back. I'm more of a comprehensive view of what's going on, right? So we're gonna follow up now with the next episode in this 3-part mini-series, if you will. Is now we're going to talk about, beyond the DDR shortage, how global events affect hardware. And when we talk about global effects, we talk about like conflicts in different countries and stuff like that, how that affects the shortages or manufacturing of anything that we need as a hardware component in computers, right? So when we unpack that, right, we're talking about supply chains, right? So, here is so I'm going to talk about that in this episode. So, like I said, in the last episode, we talked about DDR RAM shortage and how the memory manufacturers are shifting to DDR5 and AI infrastructure. So everybody know about AI stuff, and I live in Pennsylvania. So there's a couple of server farms being developed right now. We're going to be housing these servers that run these DDR5 memory inside the server, because that's how they're able to capitalize on the power of AI, because that's how it does its computing and so on and so forth. So the GPU that's inside these servers run the DDR5, and that's kind of what it is. Because that's the what the servers need to run the AI models in a roundabout way, right? So some manufacturers are shifting to that, right? DDR4 is very powerful too, but that's normally what's in your computer, in your laptop, and so on and so forth. But again, because of the AI, they're kind of shifting to that, and then DDR4 becomes expensive because they're not really making them as much as they used to make them anymore, and that's a problem, right? So, but today we want to take a step back though and look at something bigger, right? So, because of hardware shortage, because hardware shortage doesn't just happen because companies decide they're going to change the direction, right? It also happens because of global supplies. So we're talking about global chain, global supplies, and global conflict, right? So instability, like what's going on right now in the Middle East, believe it or not, could affect. Is affecting what we're talking about, right? Definitely, right? So the hidden supply chain. So you guys are aware of how things get to you, right? You know that there's a truck that delivers the items that you want to the stores, or maybe Amazon takes it to your house, okay? But there's a whole supply chain behind that. And I remember coming across this when I read Free to Choose by Milton Friedman, and he talks about a pencil and the number 2 pencil that you have in your hand when you do your tests with, I remember doing a lot of those when I was in Jamaica. I used to use number 2 pencil for doing something called common entrance exam. That's what you have to do when you're in grade like 5 or 6, so you can progress to the next stage in your academic career. In a number 2 pencil, but number 2 pencil has the little rubber on the top with the eraser, and then inside of it there's a lead that you use to write. And I would just have the pencil, use the pencil, not think about how that came to me, so I could do my tests. And he gave me this, and in the book he gave you this long explanation about timber and the guys cutting the timber, and it goes into the manufacturer, and then they shit the timber down and they put it together, and they get the lead. They have to mine the lead out of the wherever the mining is. They gotta get that, and I gotta go through a bunch of chemical process, and then everything comes together, and it goes into the pencil, and they put it together, and then the pencil goes on a truck, and then the truck goes to a store, and then yada yada. So that's a supply chain, right? And he talks about how the prices of each of those parts that the pencil need is communicated to the manufacturer through prices, not through somebody telling somebody else that we could just gotta raise the price of this or that. And also he talks about how the people who are doing the timber would not necessarily be friends with the guy that's mining the lead, but they are still working together because of economics and how economics works. So these are the mindset that I take into thinking about the hardware that we are using in technology. All of it come from all over the world, coming together to go into your computer so it works. So if one of those things, one of those supply chains get disrupted, it's going to trickle down, right? So that being said, that's like a synopsis. Like if you really want to know about all this stuff, read Free to Choose from Milton Friedman. Friedman is a freaking brilliant dude, all right? And people think that computers are the simple products, like simple products is on your desk, kind of like I felt about the pencil. But really, your computer is built from components sourced all over the world, right? And memory from one country, chip fabricated, right, in another place. So the memory is fabricated it comes from one place and manufactured in another place, right? And source and from whatever else in the world it coming from, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is that the chip that we call DDR5 or DDR4, it comes from different mining places, and there's other things that come together just to get you that one chip, right? And memory from other countries and chips and fabrication in other material sources from elsewhere, and then everything assembles somewhere else completely different from where it actually originated from. And it's a global system, and the system is very sensitive to disruptions. That's kind of going around a long way just to say that one thing, right? So when it comes to industrial material, and I mentioned this in the last one, like helium and others, right? One thing most people don't think about is the material required in the manufacturing of chips. So when we just talk about Silicon Valley all the time, we're talking about industrial gases like helium, neon, and other things that are used in the manufacturing process. These materials are critical and not critical, very, very important in the process, in the cooling and the precision environment that you need to create a chip, right? And maintaining stability with these other materials like the helium and neon is very crucial to this whole process. Very, very important to this whole process. Very, very critical to this whole process. And if the supply or the supply chain get broken on or is unstable in any way, the manufacturer becomes the product become more expensive, and you know where we are. Or some things, it might get to you slower, or all the things that comes from that one disruption in that product, in that supply chain. So in a roundabout way, that's how the current events going on affects how things play out, right? So conflict in different parts of the world can affect and will affect the access and resources and transportation routes and energy supply of what we need in the computers and in the servers and all this other stuff, right? So what happens? It doesn't just affect oil and gases, and that's what people need to understand. What's going on is not, they talk about it in the news all the time, well, oil this and gas this and energy and blah 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 blah, and they do tap on a little bit about the supply chain and then how you're gonna feel it in the tank and reserve oil in different countries and blah 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 blah. But trust me, it's not just that, right? And I'm not picking a side here either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that war shouldn't happen or war should happen. I'm not taking a position in the conflict. I'm just saying this is what happens when the supply chain gets disrupted, right? So even though we know that the supply chain was kind of disrupted from before because the manufacturer was trying to focus on the AI demand, right? And they weren't creating as much of one chip because they prioritized another chip. Now we had this to the pile, right? And it doesn't just affect, like I said, it doesn't just affect gas. It ripples through the industry, like semiconductors get affected, semiconductor manufacturing get affected, and when manufacturers' costs go up, right, everything eventually go downstream, right? It's all the things get on the consumer, and businesses start to feel it, which is what we're talking about. So how does it connect back to the DDR shortage, right? So when you look at something like a DDR RAM storage, it's not just the companies choosing to focus on AI, right? Limited resource, shifting priorities, and global pressure, all the countries shape what gets produced, what gets manufactured. They have to triage in a sense. And I know about triage because I know it's a medical term, but sometimes you do it financially with your life. So how does this impact businesses, right? So small businesses, the takeaway from this is simple, right? Hardware availability is not guaranteed. Let me repeat myself. Hardware availability is not guaranteed. Prices is not always stable. And upgrades that seem simple today might not be simple tomorrow, right? And might be more expensive. It might be more difficult. So you have to plan, and planning matters. And we're going to dig into that more on part 3 of this series. So, and before we go into the closing, I want to recap, right? Because this is a heavy topic, and I'm talking like I don't know how to explain this. I don't want to talk too much about politics because it's a tech focused podcast, and I don't want to talk about too much about philosophy. It's gonna come into play, in economics. It's gonna come into play, but there's certain truths about life that one can't get away from, right? And then a person like me who believes in absolute truths is that's what's gonna come out in my podcast and my worldview, right? So I'm not picking a side when it comes to the conflict, but I'm just trying to tell you that, because again, when I listen to other people that talk about tech, tech podcasts and that kind of stuff, or on YouTube, they're focusing on how evil the companies are and things are not available because of greed and yada yada yada. And I'm not saying that doesn't play a role in some things, right? Sometimes they're just doing things because they want to make the most money out of things. And I can point out several ways companies do it. But we have a choice as consumer if you want to partake in it or not, right? And business do rely on these technologies and your computer and your servers and your firewalls. Like, this is not really, if you're gonna be in business in this time frame, this day and age, you need this stuff, right? So I don't like the position of like, oh, Nvidia is evil because they're costing too much money, or Nvidia is evil because there's like this circle between Nvidia and Meta and they're just moving the money around. Like, why do you care what they're doing with the money? Like, why do you care, right? They're doing whatever they need to do to meet the market demands that they're making. Again, it might be a mistake. We've been through this in the early 2000s with the .com, right? People were throwing money left, right, and center back then too. Like, I told you that this is a bubble. I remember telling you this is a bubble. Not that AI isn't good, but what AI is going to do and how we're going to use it and what it's going to look like at the end, nobody knows. We're just throwing money at every idea, the same way we did with internet sites, with websites. We were throwing money at anything with a .com at the end of it. We didn't know what it was going to look like, but we know it's going to be big. And that's the same thing with AI. People are complaining about AI in all different kind of ways, whether it's from Terminator, Starlink, or is it going to be sentient, or it's taking away jobs, or all these. Now they're complaining about the server farms going everywhere, it's humming and people can't sleep. It's all different complaints, and I'm not saying that these complaints or these concerns are not valid, right? But it's coming. This AI is coming. You know what I mean? Like, it's coming. It's kind of what Booker T. Washington said about the civil rights, right? Civil rights at the time. He said it's like a train going on a track. You can't stop it. It's coming. And there's a lot of questions, right? But people are not asking the questions. It's coming. So you as a business owner, what you're going to do, how you're going to position yourself. Okay, there's a shortage. Now we know why there's a shortage. There's a multiple things that's causing the shortage. We just talked about it in this podcast, right? So how are we going to approach it? You have to understand what's going on. Don't be reactionary, and then plan around it, right? I just today had to replace my modem in my house. I have a DOCSIS 3.0 modem. It's been in the house for a couple of years, and I am the kind of person that I'll let the wheels fall off or something before I replace it, right? So there's some kind of power surge over the night and whatever, and there's things inside my server rack to protect from power surges, but this thing has been near for like 7-8 years, so it's way beyond replacement. Like, it should have been replaced a while ago, but it's my house, whatever. I can go to Best Buy and pick up a new one, and that's what I did. But I wouldn't recommend that for someone that needs internet, because that went down at 4 o'clock in the morning and they didn't replace it until I got up and got my breakfast and all this stuff, and I went to the Best Buy and picked it up. So I picked it up around like 12, 11 o'clock. So it was out for like 8 hours. It was down for about 8 hours, right? Or not. 8 hours, yeah, on that. So I can afford that. It's a house, okay? But if this was a business, there should have been a modem sitting in the closet somewhere. So when time the modem goes down, I can grab it and put it in and off to the races we go, right? It'll be down for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. That's the difference. And this is a definite easy case because the modem is really old. So once it got to like 4 or 5 years or 6 years pushing it, I should have had a modem put away for it already. Again, so that's what I'm saying. It's like also, other, and it's like I said, I'm going to talk about this more in the third podcast, but I just wanted to give you like an idea of how we can position ourselves so we're not reacting to price changes and stuff like that, right? Again, they're manufacturing DDR5 for server farms, for the GPUs that has to do the processing of the LLMs, large language models, right? DDR4 still works. right? DDR4 is fine. Now, they're a little bit hard to come by, but they're fine. And again, when I say that they're focusing on DDR5s, they're still manufacturing DDR4s, right? But again, now because of the whole conflict, blah, 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 helium is on a shortage and whatever. So let's see how it plays out, right? I'm not going to jump to any conclusion, but you position yourself. You might have to hold on to your computer a little bit longer than you want it to, right? You might have to do that. And that's just the name of the game. So talk about the hidden supply chain, talk about the shortage of the helium, talk about the global conflict angle, right? Talked about that. And or you connect to DDR5, talk about that, talk about business impact. So you get my closing thoughts in a way. And technology might feel digital because of you're online and you're doing things online. But it's built on physical or very physical, very global systems. So even though you're in front of your computer and you're looking at a website and everything is virtual, it's running on hardware that's physical, right? Remember that, right? Websites that you're looking at, God knows where it is in the world. Like not in the city that you live in the world, right? I have a radio station, internet radio station, and the server that runs my radio station, like that does the broadcasting, is not even in America, it's in England, right? So it's crazy, and I stream from here to that server, and then that server does the global, managing the global stuff. So that's kind of how crazy that is. So yes, it's you feel like it's digital, but it's actually physical, and understanding the system gives you an advantage. This is kind of what I talk about when you're making decisions, and it's kind of my blind spot too, because I do kind of break things down a lot to the nucleus of things, and then it works most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't, like in relationships and stuff like that. I'm okay with that as a as a trade-off, but it does. I do break things down to the nucleus, and I say, okay, what is the reason why this is happening? Biology, okay, so let's focus on the biological thing. And then people are like, what about my feelings? So I'm like, oh well, I know why you have the feelings, so I'm just gonna focus on why you have the feelings. I'm not gonna worry about the feeling itself. That's irrelevant, and that's kind of where the relationship thing kind of fall apart. But focusing on why things are happening, really understanding it, helps you out in your business, because then you can get rid of all the noise and you can focus on what. So that's what I'm trying to understand the system itself, and what gives you an advantage when you're making decisions for your business. Okay, so that's kind of how I'm taking it. So yes, we're gonna do this in a 3 parts. So we already did DDR RAM shortage. Now we'll talk about kind of more expand upon it, like it's not just this one thing that's causing it, is these other aspects, and it's a global thing. And in the next one, I'm going to talk about the solutions and little ideas that business should take into consideration during this process. So stay tuned for that. So thanks for listening to Act on Tech. All right, if you need any help building a reliable system or planning your IT infrastructure, visit alexcustomtech.com. Now, I'm saying this myself. I've thought about it over the course of me doing this podcast, and I'm like, you know what? Let me start telling you guys to visit the website, and if you need help, let me know from there. All right? I'm still doing some tweaks, but by all means, go on there, fill out the form there, and I will get back to you if you need help. If you like what you're listening to, you think I can help you in your business, by all means, go on there, fill out the website, fill out the form, and I'll get back to you, all right? Because I do love this, and if I can help anybody out there listening to this, I would love to do that. Okay? Like I always say, stay productive.
Hey there, Jersey and Eastern PA businesses. Ready to take your IT game to the next level? Get excited, because Alex Custom Tech is coming your way. We're your go-to for IT support, bringing integrity and trust to every service. From network upgrades to virtualization and even relocating your IT setup, we've got you covered. Stay tuned as we put the finishing touches on our new site. Alex Custom Tech, helping your business thrive with top-notch IT support right in your backyard.